After 5 years, Tesla's semi-truck is finally a reality. But the announcement actually includes more information than we might at first have thought, including for other products that Tesla will make in the future, like the Cybertruck and potentially some mystery products. Let's take a look. Hey y'all, it's Dr. Know-It-All. I will obviously put a link to the semi-truck announcement event in the description so you can look at it yourself. It's not all that long. It says 57 minutes or so, but like 20 something minutes is people waiting around with music playing. So the event itself is only about a half hour, so it's not that long to watch. But it is chock full of really interesting information, and I'm still sort of digesting the best way to talk about it. So I'll just, I'll say things kind of in a stream of consciousness order, but I think there is a really important aspect that they didn't talk about, and that's actually a very important thing that we do need to cover, but I'm going to save that for the end. So the first thing is the announcement that the Semi is using a 1,000 volt powertrain. That is massive. I think Lucid is the EV company that makes the one with the highest voltage powertrain at this point, which is 900 volts. So this even overleaps them. And even though it wasn't really said, it seems to me like other products, hint, hint, the Cybertruck, could well be using a 1,000 volt powertrain as well. And that will actually tie into something that comes up a little bit later. So anyway, it looks like they actually have just decided to go, instead of jumping to like 400 volts or 500 volts or something like that, they're just like, nope, we're just going to leapfrog everybody and we're going to go to 1,000 volts. The higher the voltage that you run, it's more dangerous, I guess. But the big advantage is that everything is much smaller. The cables can be smaller, they can weigh less. There's efficiencies. There's a lot of efficiencies at running at higher voltage, basically. That's kind of what it comes down to. And I don't have them all like in my head right at the moment, so I'm not going to like spew a bunch of stuff and be wrong about half of this and have people in the comments telling me that. But anyway, there are a lot of efficiencies that come with operating at higher voltages. It's also more complex as well. And like I said, there's some danger added to it, although, when you're already at hundreds of volts anyway, it's already, I don't know. There's probably not much more danger depending on which kind of voltage you operate at. But anyway, so that is a huge, huge step that they've taken to go to 1,000 volt powertrain. That's a really big deal. The second thing is that they are basically using the Plaid Model S, Plaid Model X motor system. And that's actually massive news as well. So they're not just using a standard run-of-the-mill motor like you'd find on the Model Y or Model 3 or something, although they're not standard run-of-the-mill motors, but you know what I mean. The sort of more mainstream motors, they're using these very, very advanced carbon overwrap, motors that they've got. Elon said that it's about the size of a football and you can actually carry it. And if you think about a truck pulling 80,000+ pounds with something this size, it's pretty incredible. But anybody who's driven a Tesla or honestly any EV, that there is just an immense amount of power in these motors. So it's not super surprising, but it's also really impressive that they're able to use such small motors to be able to drive as much, it's not just the truck's weight, but everything it's carrying, and to be able to go up hills and everything. By the way, it went over the Donner Pass. I think it's a 6% grade, maybe 5%. Anyway, I'll put video of that over it. It says it on there. But I've driven over the Donner Pass. It's very, very steep and it's not a joke. And we'll talk about range in a minute. And they went over another relatively impressive pass to do their 500-mile test. And I found the range test particularly interesting, but we'll get back to that in a minute. So anyway, so they've got the Plaid powertrain. They're using 3 motors, not just one. And apparently, just like my Mac Studio that has 2 efficiency CPUs, in other words, they run at sort of low power just to maintain the system and everything. And then a bunch of high performance CPUs that do really heavy duty work when it's needed, which is, not super often. It's whenever it's required. Just like that, the Tesla Semi has 3 motors, and one of them is a high efficiency motor that runs all the time. So maybe that's the frontmost set of wheels, and that's constantly driving the wheels, and it's very efficient to do so. And then the other 2 motors can kick in, maybe only one if you need a little acceleration, and maybe 2 when you need a lot of acceleration. Those kick in when you're going up a grade or when you have to accelerate rapidly out of a parking lot or something and get up to high highway speed and everything. But you can see that there's a wonderful kind of efficiency trade-off because, of course, operating three motors is going to take a lot more energy, but you don't really need to operate three motors. You don't need to accelerate very often, and you don't need to go up hills, all that often. Obviously, you do sometimes. But anyway, so under those circumstances, it can just kick them in, and they have very, very clever software that just blends these new motor, the torque of those motors in as you're driving, which, by the way, brings up another interesting point. Elon said, aside from it being very, very large, it's basically a Tesla Model 3. He said it drives like a Tesla, which I thought was funny because it is a Tesla, but he was indicating it drives more like a sedan, more like a personal car rather than a truck. And there's a lot of stuff you have to know to be able to drive a traditional diesel truck that you basically don't have to know anymore. So, excluding the trailer, I would imagine most of us with regular driver's licenses could just get in the semi-truck cab and we could drive that around. You'd have to be a little careful because it's very, very large. But, you could get into that and you could drive it around. That would not be the case with a diesel truck. It would probably take some education just to be able to drive it around a parking lot. So I'm not suggesting this. Obviously, you have to have a commercial driver's license to drive the Tesla Semi. But I am saying that it's one of those things where they've reduced the complexity of learning how to drive it a great deal. So it should drive much more like a car, even when you're carrying a very, very large and heavy load behind you. And speaking of driving up and down hills, there is the obvious advantage that electric vehicles have, which is regenerative braking. So they did talk about this at some length, actually. You go up a hill and you're using a lot of power, but as you come down a hill, with something like a diesel semi-truck, you have to gear down, right? So you have to shift down to a lower gear and use engine braking, and you also have to ride the brakes. So you get very hot brakes, and you're also wearing and tearing on the engine a great deal as you're going down a relatively steep grade. An electric truck, on the other hand, can use regenerative braking, so it can kick in all three motors in reverse mode, so it's charging up the battery as it goes down the hill, and that can provide most, if not all, of your braking needs. And then they were saying when you get to the bottom of these very large hills, the brakes are still cool, as opposed to semi-trucks, diesel semi-trucks, where you get to the bottom of the hill and they're very, very hot. And I'm sure you've all seen those as runaway truck ramps that go off, and turn into gravel and stuff. And that's because the brakes can overheat on a truck, and if you miss hitting the correct gear as you're going down the hill, you can easily speed up too much and the brakes can't stop the truck because they heat up too much, and then you have to have a runaway truck ramp or something, and the truck can be very dangerous. So there's a safety factor involved, obviously, but there's also a huge amount of energy recouping that happens as you go down a hill, so you actually can gain some power back. And now let's talk about range. So I just imagine that Tesla went out and found the flattest place, like maybe Kansas, going from Denver to Kansas City. It's all slightly downhill. It's all very, very flat, very, very straight. That's an easy kind of thing. That's like getting 500 miles on easy mode. But they did it from San Francisco to San Diego, which involves going up over the Grapevine. And I've driven that many, many times. It's on the 5 freeway in California, and it's very, very steep going up and down. So you can see that they lost a lot of power going up the Grapevine from this graphic, but then they regenerated a bunch of that energy back again as they went back down. And of course, also remember, they were doing this in traffic. They weren't, the guy wasn't driving on a test track or something in circles for 500 miles. He was driving in traffic, which means you have to accelerate, decelerate. You have to do all of these things that you normally do with driving. So this was not some special case efficiency test to make this work. This is a route that people have driven. I've never done it all the way from San Diego to San Francisco, but I've definitely done San Francisco to LA before multiple times. And so, I know that route, and it can be very crowded and gnarly to get through all of that stuff. So kudos to Tesla for not doing some sort of faked, trumped up test to try to make sure that they could get the best possible results, because they definitely could have done a better, result. If they'd done that Denver to Kansas City thing, they probably could have gotten closer to 550 or 600 miles, because again, it's all kind of slightly downhill, all very straight, not a ton of traffic outside of Denver. So they definitely could have made the numbers look better, but this was a real world type of experiment, and they drove it and they demonstrated that it works under a condition where many truck drivers will be doing routes like that. So it's super, super impressive. And speaking of that, what is the range of the semi-truck? Well, as this picture indicates, they went from San Francisco to San Diego, which is just at 500 miles, and they started at 97% battery and they ended with 4% battery. And Elon Musk just this morning tweeted out that the Tesla Semi gets about 1.7 kilowatts per mile. And this is at 82,000 pounds as well. And that's incredible because it's only 5 times less efficient than my Model Y or thereabouts. Anyway, that's like insanely amazing that they're able to have something that efficient carrying that much weight. And Elon did tweet also that he thought they could get it down to 1.6 or even 1.5 kilowatts per mile. So they can get even more efficient. Anyway, given those numbers, if you multiply 1.7 times 500 miles, you get 850 and throw in like 5%-ish for some buffer and everything. So we're looking at something like a 900 kilowatt hour battery pack. So that's about 10 times or an order of magnitude bigger than the Tesla, sedans and things like that, SUVs, etc. So it depends on which vehicle you're talking about, but something, around 80 kilowatt hours, and you're looking at 900 kilowatt hours. So you're looking at 10 times that amount. That's not that much more battery. And it's actually really good to find this out because that means that I was assuming that they were going to have a 1 megawatt battery pack. And so basically they're saving 10% off of what I thought they were going to have to use battery wise with every single truck. So that's pretty impressive, right? If you're getting 500 miles and using 10% less battery than I, as an outsider, had kind of assumed, that means that every 10 trucks you produce, you get 1 extra truck worth of batteries. So that's a pretty huge deal, and efficiency is going to be completely insane. And of course, the fact that Elon Musk said it looked like an elephant but drove like a cheetah. He said it doesn't really look right when you watch it drive. And this would obviously be the cab itself without the trailer, but if it's not hauling the trailer, it can do like 0 to 60 in some crazy time. They didn't actually specify, but it's very, very fast. And so, he was calling it the cheetah elephant or something. I don't know. Anyway, maybe that'll be my thumbnail. Who knows? I have so many ideas for titles and thumbnails for this episode. But that's all like really, really cool. And it should be really fun to drive, which means that perhaps a new generation of truck drivers who is not interested in driving the old diesel trucks, which by the way produce 20% of the pollution and 36% of the particulate matter from road pollution. And so that's a really big deal. So obviously there's the environmental aspects. There's also the sound aspects, right? Trucks are super, super loud. So having a truck that's quiet and can accelerate without being really, really loud will be great. Having it not pollute, having, living around those areas, living near highways and stuff like that, you definitely have a statistically lower lifespan than people who live far away from large highways. So there's a lot of factors involved here. It's not just sort of global environmental stuff, but it's also very much local environmental things as well. So all of that is really, really fantastic. But at the same time, they really focused on making the driving experience good. So that means that, you could have a lot of truck drivers who either are going to purchase their own, or for a company might say, yeah, I'll drive it, but I'm only going to drive a Tesla. So I could definitely see a group of particularly younger truck drivers saying, I'm not going to drive a diesel truck. I only want to drive this truck for various reasons, mostly probably because it's more enjoyable to do so. And beyond the basic comfort features, you get things like no jackknifing control, right? So it will control it so that the truck can't do this sort of motion and create a really, really bad situation. It'll have better torque control. There will be a lot of things which will make the driving experience safer and better for the driver. And speaking of software, obviously a ton of work went into the software to make this truck drive well and drive efficiently. But the thing that they didn't talk about was any kind of automated features. And that is something that they've talked about in the past. And it was like radio silence on that front. So what's up with that? Well, I watched the time lapse thing of the guy driving, the 8-hour, 500-mile drive. And it appeared to me that he was using some form of cruise control. So it didn't look like he was actually having to apply the accelerator and the brake. He wasn't having to do that. He was definitely having to steer. So if it has a basic cruise control, that would of course put it on the same level as regular diesel trucks that has a basic cruise control. No idea whether it's traffic aware cruise control or not. I think that Tesla's going to release a regular time, the full 8 hours so you can go watch it. And if that happens and it's not that like really high speed thing, I'll try to go watch a section of it and see if I can tell. But at least from the high speed, it appeared that there was basic cruise control, but that there was definitely not auto steering or anything like that. So I'm not super surprised at this. I'm just surprised that they didn't talk about it at the release event. As far as the future ability to be able to add full self-driving, it does appear that there are enough cameras around the semi-truck to be able to make this happen, but I don't know. They might need like an external like remote camera behind the trailer or something like that. And they probably have to collect a ton of data to retrain the network for a semi-truck. Because remember, most, all of the sedans from the Model 3 to the Model X are relatively the same size. I mean, obviously the Model X is bigger, but they're not, incredibly different dimensionally. And the semi-truck is very, very different dimensionally. So it's definitely going to require some training to do this. I could easily imagine a year or two before they're able to implement any kind of like lane assist or anything like that. Maybe they'll be able to do it faster. But again, you got to remember, you're not going to have a ton of these trucks on the road at the beginning. They're just starting deliveries. So you don't have the data collection engine that you do with the sedan, with the consumer vehicles. So it could take them a year to 2 years to get some sort of ADAS system up and running for the semi-truck. But that really will be a big game changer when it happens, because again, even if they can just do caravan mode, where you could have maybe like 3 or 4 Tesla semis behind each other, and the lead driver is a human, but all of the other ones are autonomous and they're just following, that will save a lot of money and allow companies to be able to drive more trucks with fewer drivers, which is a big deal because there aren't enough truck drivers, at least in the United States right now. And finally, that brings us to charging. And they didn't really show the charging interface. What they showed was the internals of the cable. But the fact that they just released the Tesla charger, connector, the physical connector and the specs for it, they just suggested this as a standard and sort of released that spec to the public, and apparently are selling it at Best Buy now as well, which is really interesting move on their part. Anyway, given that that's liquid cooled, and given that it says it works up to 1 megawatt of charging, that was like what they said in the standard, I would not be surprised at all if it's pretty much the same connector as we see already on our Teslas. And the biggest reason why is because Elon dropped a bit of a bombshell here. That is that the Cybertruck is going to be able to use up to 1 megawatt charging. And wow, holy crap. Number one, that probably means the Cybertruck will be on a 1,000-volt powertrain. Number two, he did say also that there will be future vehicles that will be using this. I don't know if that will be a retrofit of like Model Ys and Model 3s and Model Xs and Model Ss, or whether it will be the new, robo-taxi. I mean, again, think about the robo-taxi. There could be a big advantage to being able to charge at much higher rates of speed, because if you have a car that's being used continuously, every second that it's sitting charging you're not making money with it. So if they can use 1 megawatt charger, even for something that you would think you wouldn't need it for, which is a relatively compact car that's just driving around cities for the most part, that would still be a huge thing. And also, if we look at if you took my Model Y and you could do 1 megawatt charging, and I'm not saying like my 2021 Model Y is definitely not going to be able to do this, but the next generation, the Model Y or Model 3 2.0, if you had a 1,000-volt powertrain and you had a very, very large charger that could do up to 1 megawatt, you could start looking at maybe 10 minutes to do a 20% to 80% fill. So that's the kind of standard thing if you're on a road trip. And at that point, it starts to become pretty close to the filling speed of, filling up the gas tank, going in and paying for it, all of that kind of stuff. So you're starting to shrink down that time gap that you have between the electric charging experience and filling up the gas tank. And so this could make a really big difference. Anyway, I think that there's a really good indication that if the Cybertruck is going to be able to use these 1 megawatt chargers, that the connector will be the same connector that we're already used to. So all of this is really amazing news. Incredible that Tesla was able to pull this off. So many people said that the semi-truck, including Bill Gates, said it was vaporware and it was never going to happen. And shout out to Nikola, the company, not the person. But anyway, shout out to them for having a pusher truck, and shout out to Tesla for actually making a real truck. Wow. I don't know about you, but I can't wait until I see my first one in the wild. All right, I hope you enjoyed this episode and found it fun and interesting and thought-provoking. If you did, please do like it so other people can find it. And of course, consider subscribing for more of this kind of content. As always, a huge shout out to my patrons on Patreon. Thank you all so much for your support. I truly appreciate it. And of course, if you want to join the team, just check out the link in the description. And if you're interested in a whole bunch of really cool merch, check out our merch store. Link is in the description. We have TeslaBot t-shirts, the Tesla meme t-shirt, Success is a Possible Outcome, 4680 battery cells. All of that stuff is on t-shirts, mugs, tumblers, and on. So check it out. And for those of you interested in investing, check out WeBull, an amazing platform for buying and selling stocks, and now cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin, Dogecoin, and others. Open an account and get a free stock valued at up to $200.
and fund your account and get another free stock valued at up to $1,600. Check out the link in the description and help the channel at the same time. Thank you.
And finally, don't forget we are both Tesla and Amazon affiliates. If you look in the description, you can see how going shopping for a solar roof, a power wall, or anything on Amazon helps out the channel. In the meantime, I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.